Hello and welcome to Pro Baseball World Tour here on RTC Multimedia. Rick Crabb, and joining me as always from his palatial estate, Mr. Eric Marenbach, who's currently monitoring some. Is the Nicaraguan league that you're watching right now, Eric? Or?
Actually, I am watching
Dominican. I apologize. Monitoring the Dominican league. Oh, okay, yeah. We'll definitely talk about that more in depth. We have a lot to talk about this week. We have the KBO Playoffs just wound down, and we'll be beginning the Korean Series as of November 17th, which is the day after this broadcast has been recorded. We'll also talk about the NPB Playoffs getting ready to set up. Probably talk a little bit more about the league we mentioned last week, the Popcorn League in Taiwan, and we'll also mention about the Dominican leagues that Eric is currently monitoring and some of the other winter leagues too. We have one story though. We're going to stay in North America for just a little bit. Have a breaking story from a team that we've ridiculed a lot because of their handling of the COVID situation, but they made a positive move over the weekend, Eric. The Miami Marlins have named a new general manager. Woman that you're familiar with because you told me off the air that she worked with Cashman in the Yankees organization, Ms. Kim. How do we pronounce her name? Is it Kim Ng by chance?
Yeah.
Yes. Kim Ng is the new general manager of the Miami Marlins, and I have a story regarding that written by a Yahoo Sports columnist by the name of Shalise Mansa Young. Headline: New Marlins GM Kim Ng is a deeply qualified beacon of progress for women in sports. 15 years after she interviewed with the team for the general manager opening, Kim Ng made history on Friday when the Miami Marlins named her their new GM. She is the first woman in professional American sports, men's sports that is, to hold the title, ushering in a day that has long seemed as though it would never come. A fixture in front offices and the league office for decades, Ng is overqualified for her new job, but as any woman who's tried to become quote-unquote the first in any gig can tell you, that's basically a requirement. She began her career as an intern with the Chicago White Sox in 1990, and 8 years later, at 29 years old, she was named assistant GM of the New York Yankees under Brian Cashman. After 3 years and 3 World Series titles with the Yankees, Ng went to the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2002, interviewing for their GM job in 2005. Passed over for Ned Colletti, she stayed with that franchise until 2011. That's when she moved into the league office as Senior Vice President of Baseball Operations. Over the years, Ng has interviewed with 4 other teams to become GM, but none pulled the trigger. Earlier this year, Ng sat down with Canada's Sportsnet and was asked if baseball is ready for a female GM. Quote, "They should be," Ng said. Quote, "We see female world leaders, CEOs, secretaries of state. There's no reason that there shouldn't be a woman general manager. I think it's going to take a bold, courageous, gender-blind owner for the glass ceiling to be broken." Marlins CEO and part owner Derek Jeter, whom Ng worked with during her time with the Yankees, along with controlling owner Bruce Sherman, are those people. The chief operating officer of the Marlins is also a woman, Carolyn O'Connor. The team isn't shying away from its decision. After a tweet trumpeting her hire and highlighting some of her achievements, the avatar for the Marlins Twitter feed was changed to a picture of Ng, announced, quote-unquote, our GM. Despite her breadth of experience and deep respect throughout the game, there were still reports the day before her hiring that the Marlins would be naming an outside-the-box pick for the role. If that box is the one that contains only men, then Ng does come from outside of it. But this isn't the White Sox pulling a manager out of mothballs. This should have happened years ago. Thankfully, fan reaction has been positive. Personal favorite, quote, "You can't spell rings without ing." An encouraging sign for those of us who have become accustomed to every headline about a woman blazing new trails in men's American sports, leading to trolls grousing about how having women in any roles is just an abomination. For women doing the work within teams as coaches or scouts, in baseball and beyond, and those of us who have been in sports media for years, the reaction has been jubilation. So many of us have stories of being told that we have no business trying to coach men or evaluate men, or write or talk about men's sports, pushed, not usually gently, to either leave entirely or coach/cover women's sports, or flat out disrespected for pursuing a dream job. Oddly, you're hard-pressed to find men told they shouldn't coach women, or that it's offensive they are the GM for a WNBA team, or spend their professional life chronicling the U.S. women's national soccer team. Funny, no? Just as young women around the country sat in front of their televisions on Saturday night to watch a woman, for the first time in American history, accept a seat in the White House, to see that their dreams to lead and occupy some of the most powerful seats in the world weren't just dreams, that it could be real, so too will they look at Ing. They don't have to be relegated to a position in media relations or marketing with a professional sports franchise. They can call the shots, craft the roster, hire the coach. To paraphrase Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, Ing might be the first woman in the GM job, but she won't be the last. So there you have it. Kim Ing, your new GM for the Miami Marlins. Eric, I know you have opinions since she's related. She has history with the Yankees, as you have mentioned off the air, and as we mentioned on the air in this article. How do you think she'll do in this position? I mean,
you know what? I give her a lot of credit for sticking around and kind of defying the odds, so to speak. Like I said to you off the air, I've known Kim for a number of years, ever since she was assistant GM under Cashman in the Bronx. And she's got a lot of brains. When she left the organization to join the Dodgers, I was a little bit PO'd, but, at the time, the Yankees weren't ready to move on. They were sticking with Cashman, and they weren't really looking to give Kim a shot. She decided to try her luck elsewhere, and it's taken her years to do so. But it took Derek Jeter, who in recent years has had a history of kind of plucking former Yankee talent and having them join the Marlins. This is just the latest hire, and it's of the utmost important job. She's going to have a lot of people behind her to motivate her a little bit and try to show her the ropes, and I'm sure she's not going to take credit for all the moves within the organization and or get blamed for some of the bonehead moves within the organization. But it's her first job, and it's a proud moment, not only in sports history, but as a woman as well. You've got a woman in the White House now. Why not have a woman as a general manager?
And it's not like the Florida Marlins have a winning tradition. They have won several World Series, but it's been kind of a roller coaster history with them. They've had the World Championship years, but then they've had some years where they were either picked to be at the bottom of the standings or were in the bottom of the standings. So, quite frankly, I don't think Ms. Ing could do any worse than those people. So, but it sounds like she's immensely qualified, and she worked under a qualified general manager as well. So, good luck to her, and hopefully we'll see some interesting things in Miami. And it seems like from this past season, Eric, as abbreviated as it was, it seems like the Marlins have a lot of good young players to build upon if she wants to craft the team a little more. So next season will be interesting. Hopefully it'll be a full 162-game season, but if not, it should still be fun to watch. So good for her.
I definitely have something to build on, and you're looking to change history a little bit as far as the Marlins go, because even with their 2 championships that are under their belt, the very next season after they won, they kind of had a fire sale because they couldn't support the payroll that they had. So they kind of bought their championships and then had a fire sale, resold them to get the talent. It took a while to gel a little bit, and then they had to do the same thing again in 2003 after winning it in 1997. So,
right.
And because that, it took them 14 years, well, actually 6 years to be relevant again.
Yeah, and that has to be discouraging for a fan base where you do build a champion and then it's like, and through finances they decide to have a fire sale, as you mentioned, and it's, I don't know, if I were a fan of that team, I'd kind of like lose hope. It's like, oh man, so they won a team, that means, okay, they're going to suck for another few years because they're going to send all my favorite players to other teams. So, I don't know. But
it's unfortunate that they don't really have a fan base. You've got the team located in South Miami after the then owner of the team, Jeffrey Lawyer, basically duped the entire state into building a brand new state-of-the-art facility in the case of Marlins Park, but in probably the worst location ever, where the old Orange Bowl used to be, where if you know anything about Miami, and especially Little Havana, it's not exactly your neighborhood market.
no.
A lot of crime down there, a lot of bad stuff down there, not necessarily because of the Cubans, but there's a lot of other stuff going on there as well. So you never really had a fan base to build on. You attempted to rebuild a fan base by getting Jose Fernandez, Cuban-born, to kind of resurrect Miami. And then what does he do? He kills himself in a boating accident. So, not to be cool or anything, but, you know, they don't really have a fan base, especially where they are in the Florida area. We'll see what happens.
Right. Now, I mean, is there any way they can get around that, though? I mean, I would think that Miami itself is an obstacle. Not only that neighborhood where they originally started playing, but just the fact that it's a warm weather beach town. You have South Beach, you have all the nightlife and all of that. I mean, I've heard the same argument made about like some cities in Southern California where it's a similar situation. They don't have a fan base mainly because there are other things to do besides watch professional sports. And especially if it's somewhere extremely hot, if you have a choice of laying out on a beach in Miami or seeing with sometimes a last place baseball team in Miami, I don't know. I think the choice is pretty clear there. But
yeah, completely different animal, especially in the summertime where, unfortunately, you're going to get a stretch where it rains every day in Florida. Even if it's only for like 10, 15 minutes at a time, and then, you know, it starts getting hot and muggy, icky, and sticky again. Mm-hmm. It rains pretty much every day down there.
Right.
So when they moved the franchise all the way down South Miami, it was bad enough when the franchise used Joe Robbie Stadium, which at the time was, you know, home of the Dolphins, and then they converted that into their baseball stadium before Gloria duped the city of Miami to go down. But, you know, dealing with the weather, along with all the other stuff, Miami, the entire state of Florida, for that matter, is more into college sports and NASCAR.
All right.
That's why, unless you're a winner, nobody will show up. And that goes for the Heat. That goes for the Panthers.
Right.
That goes for the Marlins. And that also goes for the Lightning over in Tampa for hockey. You had an entire league in the minors, the Florida State League, where your entire 7-game schedule between the 14 teams that would play would actually outdraw one game for the Marlins and or the Rays.
Huh. And that's interesting, and I guess kind of surprising if you think about it. I mean, how many years have there been spring training baseball down there? And I mean, I'm guessing maybe they may be counting more on, I guess, baseball tourists to see their favorite teams down there. But I would think, I don't know, there might be some Floridians or even some transplants that moved down there that came from New York or Boston or Chicago and, wanted to see a team of their own, or at least, especially like in Tampa, who has the Yankees affiliate, to see their Yankees come down there instead, while they can still enjoy the benefits of Florida and its weather and such.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, they rely on spring training with the moneymaker, because as soon as spring training lets out, the entire state of Florida could detach, and you wouldn't know the difference. It becomes a complete ghost town, because everybody that comes down for spring training, whether it's for a week or whether it's, somebody like me who snowbirds and sees all of spring training in Florida, like across all different stadiums.
Right.
The entire state of Florida becomes a ghost town, and your average Florida State team is about maybe 200 at best. And outside of opening day, the Marlins draw maybe 3,000-4,000 a game.
Jeez Whiz.
In Marlins Park. It's necessarily the area. It's necessarily the fact that the team isn't as good. There's a whole lot of factors because of the area.
And that's before a pandemic, where, I don't know, that might be some stadiums that do allow fans, that might be the maximum allowed, but that certainly wasn't the case before that. So yeah, that's pretty sad for attendance. I mean,
well, it's like the joke that went around sports when they were, talking about baseball coming back, and the meme was how to play baseball in an empty stadium. Just ask the Marlins or the Rays, and it would show, basically the empty ballpark of either one of them, as far as how to deal with baseball in a pandemic.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Even though the Marlins, they built a new park recently, and I don't know, I've heard mixed reviews about that, but it's like their stadiums don't really have a lot of atmosphere. I mean, the Tropicana Dome, it just looks like they're in kind of like a big airplane hangar or something. It's just like gray and desolate, and I don't know. It doesn't even look like a good indoor arena like you would see like for basketball or hockey. It just looks like, I don't know, just a big gray casserole dish, I guess. I don't know. Which is funny because I remember the Tampa Bay Lightning actually playing games there for a while, and they. All right, well, folks, look. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to move our world tour over to Korea and talk about the finals of the KBO Playoffs and the setup for the KBO Korean Series. You're listening to Pro Baseball World Tour on RTC Multimedia. We'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back to Pro Baseball World Tour. Rick Crabb, Eric Marin back. And as promised, we're moving our tour over to Korea, where we just wound up the finals of the KBO Playoffs, setting up for the Korean World Series. The finals had the Doosan Bears defending Korean champions against the KT Wiz. There were some good ball games, good close games, but Doosan wound up winning that series 3-1. And it looked like it had some good matchups. A lot of good pitching matchups in all those games, Eric. What was your take on the games this week in the playoffs?
You know what? KT put up a good fight, but overall it was their lack of postseason experience that was a downfall. And let's face it, when you have guys like Chris Flexen produce on, who actually came out of the bullpen, I think, in one of those games against KT to notch the save. And then you come back with one of the better pitchers the next day, and Raul Alcantara is shut the door. I don't care if you had 12 Mil Rojas on the team. KT was not winning that series. I give credit for making the playoffs for their first time, but their inexperience showed. And you've got a hell of a final here against the Dinos, where Doosan, given the fact that they've been in Korean Series for the past, was
It's like 5 or 6 years. I think they won like 3 out of those 5 or something to that effect, if I'm not mistaken. But
I know we're on such a roll this year that they could get most of their money. I'm liking Doosan, though.
yeah. And Doosan kind of reminds me of, it seems like just about any professional or high-level college sport, you have that team who is used to playing in the postseason. They do what they have to do to get to the playoff bracket, and then once they do, it seems like they flip another switch and they just ride that momentum all the way, sometimes all the way to the championship. It's kind of like what, I don't know, like the Lakers usually do that a lot, and it sounds like what Doosan is doing right now. So, you think it's a little bit of that going on? Or, I mean, obviously there's championship experience in their ranks too, but
there are teams that do a little coasting towards the end, thinking they're guaranteed a spot, but they don't have to play as hard, which I've accused several teams of doing in the past in Major League, and a majority of the times it seems to be their downfall when it comes to seeding and playoffs and kind of coasting in just to get there instead of earning it. Kind of backing in instead of, putting pedal to the metal. But I like what they're doing.
yeah.
Let's see. Got against the Dinos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like they're kind of on the right track. Now, you think these teams that coast, Eric, you think it could be a case of they're so confident they want to, I don't know, like for baseball teams, they want to rest arms or they want to save their rotation, or is it more just conserving energy for their top players, or do you think it's something else?
That's what these guys are saying. The one thing that's probably in the Bears' favor, is the fact, and this is not detrimental to the Dinos in any way, but it's the way that the KBO works.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't played the last 2 weeks, so there could be a little rust in there.
I was wondering about that too, and I think one of the ESPN announcers asked Daniel Kim about that. They were saying, well, the top seed doesn't have to play for 2 weeks or whatever. I mean, does that hurt them? And he said, usually it doesn't. Usually it favors them. Usually, if they make it to the top, they wind up winning. But I'm in agreement with you, Eric. I think Doosan has momentum and experience on their side. The Dinos, it seemed like several times when we were talking about them during the regular season, it seemed like they were going to tail off, and felt like Kiwoom or the Wiz or the LG Twins were going to pass by them, but somehow they hung in there. So, I mean, we got to give them credit for that as well, but I don't know. I'm liking Doosan to win this series out of the teams, but I mean, stranger things have happened. So
the only positive that could come out of this from the side of the Dinos, and I don't know what their injury factor was, that they used these 2 weeks to kind of nurse their injury through and get their players back into fresh playing shape. That could be an issue. Don't know what if anything, with the pressure of the two, whether they're the leftier of the two, remains to be seen.
Right. And you have to wonder, like, we could be asking KT if they were the ones taking on the Dinos, or you ask the Dinos themselves if it's you. I mean, they would probably deny it if you asked them, but I'm wondering if it's a case of them almost like just being happy to be there. But I don't know. It could be interesting, you know. Maybe. I mean, there has to be a first. I mean, I'm sure that. I mean, it has to be a first for any team as far as to win a championship. I'm sure there was a time where Doosan had their first championship. So who knows? But
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping it'll be a long series, especially since the series itself begins the day before my birthday. So hopefully KBO can give me a present by giving me and all of our fans, you know, good baseball to watch. They haven't disappointed up to this point, and I don't think they will with this either.
Maybe you can even get Shambi or Eduardo Perez to throw you a little happy birthday on the air. I doubt it, but hey.
Yeah. Eduardo Perez would probably be cool about it. I mean, you know, Giambi, I don't know. I might be a little nicer to him next season if he call. Well, he probably won't call in KBO. I would imagine they'll probably just stick to MLB next season. But regardless, yeah. All right. Well, and it's interesting you mentioned about Doosan using the strategy as far as bringing a pitcher to different, you know, starter to close. And it sounds like they took a page out of the Uni Lions book. So, I mean, you know, maybe they were listening to our episode last week when you were talking about them. And they were like, maybe we should try this. But, no, I'm sure it sounds like it would be, I don't know, more commonplace for all these Asian leagues, I would imagine. But haven't heard of them doing it too much in this country, but, you know.
Either that or you get to the point where you don't trust the rest of your bullpen, and it's a little bit of a slap in the face, but you're just looking to, you know, get the job done.
But really, if you look at KBO bullpens, none of them should be offended. They should probably be understanding, you know, and probably be like, yeah, I'd bench me too. You know, I gave up 7 runs, you know, like 2 weeks ago in a game against Hanwha, so, you know, yeah, I'd bench me too. But we're not. I'm sorry?
If you're a genius, if it doesn't work, you could be the biggest, you know, goat of the world and have everybody blame you for a brain dead move. You know?
Right. But it seems like it worked for 2 teams so far. I mean, it worked for the Uni Lions in Taiwan, and it looks like it worked for the Bears here in Korea. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. You might see major league teams do that next year. Who knows?
Like I said, if it works, you're a genius. If it don't work, you're going to take a lot of flack for it, like Kevin Cash did in Game 7. No.
Yeah, that's true. But well, good luck to both to do something. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
Yes, Cash still won Manager of the Year in the American League, even though he did that bonehead vote, because when it comes to playoffs, don't count.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't they decide them before, I don't know. They say they just judge it on their regular season work. I mean, even before they do it before the playoffs, more or less, even though they announce it after the playoffs. I mean, that's usually they're out. I don't know, but.
Okay. They announce it afterwards. They say it's based on the regular season. So you almost have to go with that theory. But if you threw in playoffs with it, I would have not given it to Cash. But it is supposed to be based on regular season only, which to me, I would have, fully considered not only Cash, but Charlie Montoyo as well.
All right.
Cash one of them.
Yep. No doubt. All right, Eric, do you have anything else to comment about the KBO Korean Series before we move our world tour back to your friends in Taiwan?
No. I'm pretty much done with it. Just looking at, a good matchup between Alcantara and Brushinsky.
Okay, very good.
This year, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, folks, we're going to take another break, and when we return, we're going to move our tour over to a few places. We'll talk a little bit about the Popcorn League in Taiwan that we spoke about briefly. Also, the NPB standings and the playoff seedings, and see where things are going there. And some Winter League ball, as Eric is monitoring as we speak. This is Pro Baseball World Tour here on RGC Multimedia. We'll be right back. Alright, folks, welcome back to Pro Baseball World Tour. Rick Crabb, Eric Barenback, and we're going to do kind of like a little bit of globe trotting. We'll hit a few countries going on right now. So yeah, Eric, you mentioned about the Popcorn League in Taiwan. Seems like it's an interesting product. Seems like it's, now, from what I think you said last week, you said that this league is kind of replacing their normal winter leagues over there. Is that correct?
Pretty much. This Popcorn League has been more or less of a bottom feeder, semi-pro kind of thing. Kind of like what they do in Nicaragua with the Palmares.
Mm-hmm.
But with the pandemic this year, it seems to be the replacement for the Winter League.
Right.
So, in Taiwan right now, you've got not only the Monflong High School Tournament, which is the equivalent of the NCAA Big Dance College Basketball kind of thing. That's pop.
Okay.
Division, although one of the teams, the team basically represents Chinese Taipei with the Chinese Taipei jersey. They seem to have a lot of the new incoming Dragons playing in their Winter League. So that's an interesting thing to look at as far as the CT team. The rest of the teams, basically, they represent anything from Taiwan Cooperative Bank to Taiwan Beer. Anyone remembers some of the...
Yeah, so there was a Taiwan Power, I guess like a utility company, and then there's a Taiwan Scientific, and I'm not sure what that is. I'm guessing it's maybe like a university or some type of science research facility or something. I don't know what that was, but yeah.
Yeah, and then smaller ballpark. Again, it's kind of like Arizona Fall League, where you might get 100
Mm-hmm.
So people do watch it, but it's not as popular. But again, it replaces the winter league. So at least between that and the high school kids, there's something to watch after the CPBL season ended.
Huh. Now, I mean, do they have a thing where, kind of like with the fall leagues in our country, is it like some of the CPBL teams like take some like their younger players or prospects or whatever, and maybe tell them to go to this league to get some more experience, get some more at bats or outings to pitch or that kind of thing? You see some of that with Popcorn League, or is it just players trying to break into the CPBL, or a little of both, or what do you have going on there?
This year, anyway, like I said, I think the T team has a lot of the Dragons that'll come in next year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the guys that just got drafted in this year's past CPBL. Summer drafts that are in there spread amongst all 16. But I'm not really sure.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Okay, and of course, I'll post the link that you sent me last week. You can watch some of the Popcorn League games if you're curious, folks, on YouTube. They have their own channel, so you can check that out if you like. Now we'll take our tour over to Japan for the NPB. Looks like they began on the 13th. We had a series between the SoftBank Hawks of Fukuoka against the Chiba Lotte Marines on the 13th. The Hawks win 4-3, while on the 14th, Hawks won in again against the Marines 6-4. Meanwhile, he also had the Yokohama Bay Stars on the 14th, winning their matchup against the Yomiuri Giants 5-4. So it looks like you had two games between the Hawks and the Marines, and one game so far against the Bay Stars and the Yomiuri Giants. So, any comments about the NPB so far going on, Eric?
Well, I do know that in that first series, anyway, with the Hawks and the Marines, it was the same kind of thing like the KBO, where the Hawks automatically came in and was up 1-0 before that series even started. So all they did in the best 3 out of 5 was 2 more wins.
Okay. Yeah, and I see in both of the Hawks' wins, they had Manalo winning both of those. That's interesting. Where they had the first game, Sawamura lost for Chiba Lotte, and then in the second game, Wei and Chen lost for the Chiba Lotte Marines. So it's too bad for them, but the playoffs will be rolling on for the NPB. So let me ask you this. I'll put this on the air. As far as the matchups, as far as the teams, do you see any team with any kind of advantage as far as experience, as far as any of their pitching staff, that kind of thing? Anything that you think has a good shot at taking the Japan series?
Well, the two teams with the most experience, obviously, are the Hawks and the Giants.
Right.
The Giants have had history of just annihilating teams in their 60-some-odd year history of the game. I mean, you've had stars come and go from there year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's some American import. I actually kind of like them because of the trade that they made early in the year, where they got one of my favorite players when he was with MLB, with either the Brewers, the Yankees, Giants, whatever. Dallas Wheeler came in a trade bracket and early on in the season, and he's one of their main props this year. So I'm going to favor anybody, even though the SoftBank Hawks have two Cubans that I know, and the cousins of Gracial, Moinello, and Alfredo to Spain. You gotta like the Giants.
Right. Again, I guess it's what we were talking about with the Doosan Bears, just having a lot of postseason experience. Definitely a winning tradition with that club, you know. So it should be interesting for our friends in Japan and the NPB. All right, folks. We're gonna travel to some other countries and speak about some other news that we have going on. We have an announcement we were talking about Australia will be starting their season probably late at the end of this month and going into December. Got an email directly from the ABL talking about how, now we talked about with this league, Eric, we have ABL has two divisions. They have one made up of Australian cities and the other of cities from neighboring countries, such as New Zealand and Korea. Got two articles from the ABL basically saying that two of the other foreign cities outside of Australia will not be playing this season because of COVID, that kind of thing. So I'm going to read the first article. The team called Tuatara. I think they're the team that plays in Auckland, New Zealand. They will be pulling out of. They will not be playing the 2021 season. Yes. Tuatara pulled out of season. BA released a statement. Auckland has informed Baseball Australia it is withdrawing from the 2021 Australian Baseball League season. The Tuatara formally notified the league of their decision to not take part in the upcoming season as of 10:04 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Baseball Australia Chief Executive Cam Vale has issued the following statement in response to Auckland's decision. Baseball Australia was first told of Auckland's intention to withdraw on Monday, November 9th. They were strongly advised to reconsider their position and have chosen not to reverse this decision. Auckland agreed to the International Conference model in August, and no significant circumstances have changed to create their withdrawal. If anything, there was improvement in their position to play this season with New Zealand government support. Whilst COVID is proving extremely challenging, all ABL teams committed to this season on 4 separate occasions as recently as Monday, November 2nd. Teams have given multiple opportunities to change their position, of which Auckland haven't wavered from this model up until this week. Therefore, issues cited by Auckland, such as quarantine and flight costs, whilst challenging, should have been better managed and addressed weeks, if not months ago. Alternatives were presented to Auckland to mitigate these costs that they chose not to do. The decision by Auckland is extremely disappointing on a number of other fronts. They had no reason to withdraw at this time as the position of their conference was a cost-reduced hub model, of which the principles to this model would not have changed since August 2020. They have undone an enormous amount of work by the ABL, Brisbane Bandits, and Adelaide Giants on a hub model of 7-inning baseball broadcasts internationally. The decision has cost the International Conference a valuable broadcast partnership with Sky Sport and a key accommodation partner. The 4 teams in the Australian Conference need to make adjustments to accommodate a one-conference model. Auckland were offered some form of government support. The reason for this withdrawal is best summed up as being due to mismanagement by Auckland. Whilst the ABL and other teams see the strategic importance of a New Zealand-based team in the league, the ability for Auckland to compete in future seasons is now in serious doubt. The current ownership is in breach of their ABL license agreement. They will be given 28 days to address this. Decisions of the future involvement will be made by the league and other teams in due course through the board of directors of the ABL. Right now we have a 6-team league to finalize so we can move ahead and play ball. And now, it says, Auckland's withdrawal follows Baseball Australia announcing earlier today Geelong, Korea would sit out the upcoming season due to insurmountable logistical and quarantine challenges. The league has contingencies for a 17 competition in place should GK be unable to take their place this season. It is now working on a revised 6-team schedule, which still caters for other key broadcast partners in Australia and globally, following the Tuatara's decision to backflip on its prior commitment to competing. The ABL will release a full schedule for the 2021 season early next week. So there you have it, Eric. You have teams pulling out of New Zealand and Korea for the ABL season. Now, I want to point out that the commissioner mentioned the government support of New Zealand for the Auckland team. Now, you and I, we covered the KBO for many weeks, and we know that the Korean government has been very careful with their handling of the COVID situation. I'm wondering if Geelong, if they were victims to possibly South Korean government policies, maybe they might have had their hands tied a little bit more than the New Zealand team. Although, to me, reading that statement, though, Eric, it seems like the Australian, the ABL, commissioner or whatever, basically is worried about, hey, man, you're costing us TV money. It's like, we don't care. I mean, sure, it's expensive, and sure, there's a pandemic, but you know what? You're costing us a contract with Sky Sports. Guys, come on, get your act together. It sounds like it's kind of reminds me of like people here, like especially down south with college football and sports and just disagreements about COVID in general. I don't know. What's your take on it, Eric?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how big that contract is with Sky Sports, if it really makes that big of a difference. I think they were more worried about the travel in between Australia and Korea. Not necessarily that the pandemic had been hitting either city hard. Obviously, in South Korea, it hasn't been a problem with the KBO. It shouldn't have been a problem with Geelong. As far as the New Zealand thing, it's kind of bad for them because of the way that they were run. There's got to be something more to it, though, because their manager is actually an Australian-born player, and the cousin to Graham Lloyd, the former major leaguer with the Yankees and stuff. I think there's more to it. But I think that they didn't want an odd number of teams in the league. So as long as Geelong was going to come out of there, you had to make one of the teams the scapegoat.
Right. And, I guess as a double whammy with Geelong, I'm going to go to a statement regarding them. I'll just skim through this, and probably we might be repeating stuff, from after reading those comments from the chief executive of Baseball Australia. Let's see. All right, so as far as Geelong, it says, Geelong Korea will not take part in 2021 season due to ongoing challenges presented by COVID-19, but remain committed to Australian Baseball League long term. Baseball Australia Chief Executive Cam Vale today confirmed to the ABL.com.au the league had made the difficult decision for GK to sit out the upcoming season. It was set to be the expansion team's third in the ABL. The Australian government's COVID-19 quarantine requirements proved the most challenging barrier, with Geelong Korea not able to complete the mandatory period in Queensland due to limited direct flights. Quote, the logistics and quarantine complexities are insurmountable, Vale said. We and Geelong Korea's ownership group have given our all to have them complete this season, but in the end the challenges were too great. It's an unfortunate outcome, but a short-term one only, and Geelong Korea will be back in the Australian League next season. The ABL and GK were confident that variables created by COVID-19 could be resolved, but the Australian government's restrictions have not been eased due to the ongoing global pandemic. Quote, there have been plenty of obstacles ahead of this season, but Getting 40-plus players and staff from Korea into Australia was always going to be a challenge, he said. Bale said it was incredibly unfortunate as the season was looking good for Geelong Korea. GK has established a great foundation over the last 2 years, with 19 million viewers last season across its broadcast platforms and some high-quality KBO players making their way to Australia. The lineup of players for the season was very promising, so it's frustrating that we won't see the improved team this season. Despite the setback, Vale was highly complimentary of the work of the Australian Department of Home Affairs in helping to get the season underway. The support of Home Affairs across the ABL and our 6 Australian teams has been outstanding, he said. Whilst the GK issues were too difficult to find a path through, the ABL is continuing this year largely thanks to the support of Home Affairs. The league has contingencies for a 7-team competition in place with GK be unable to take their place. Well, now looks like it'll be 6 teams after Auckland pulled out. ABL fans in Korea will be able to watch home games from this season at theabl.com/videos and via GKTV. So Eric, it looks like it's a reverse of what happened with Major League Baseball, where you had Canada not allowing the United States cities to come to play the Blue Jays in Skydome. Now it looks like the country of Australia is not allowing the Korean team to come in. So, I don't know. I find that kind of interesting. But then again, it's kind of interesting that it seems like they're taking a tougher stance against the Korean team, but not against the New Zealand team. I mean, it's still foreign countries, still travel across waters. I'm guessing maybe New Zealand is maybe a shorter flight than Geelong is. I don't know, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting. What do you think about that, though?
Well, the travel between New Zealand and Australia, I mean, they're pretty much neighboring countries within the continent. So that's why they're more pissed off that the Tuatara left rather than Geelong.
Right. And Geelong has only been in the league for 3 years. They said they were an expansion team, so it's kind of like, they're... I mean, they...
I believe Auckland and Geelong came along around the same time as expansion teams, just to put more panties in the seats.
Right. Yeah, so it's interesting to see how the Australian League will develop, and I'll post a link to that league as well, since it was mentioned in this particular article that I just read. So hopefully, if you want to check out some Australian ball, especially get to watch Sydney and Manny being Manny over there, that should be fun to watch as well. Might interfere with our sleep schedule here, depending what time they play, but, but true baseball fans, as we learned with KBO and Japan and you and others with the games in Taiwan, know how to work around that. And where there's a will, there's a way. There's baseball, and you can watch it on your TV or your device. Do it to it. So.
Thank God for YouTube.
Yeah, definitely. Thank God for YouTube. Thank God for VPNs, for Twitch, all that good stuff. So, all right. Speaking of which, so what's going on in the Dominican League that you're watching? Or is that game still going on, or did they finish up, or?
Yeah, no, their games go on. They normally start around 6:30 our time during the week, and on the weekends it's more like 4 o'clock. Right now, the game that I've got on, the Australia Orientales actually have a major leaguer pitching right now, Warner Madrigal. Pitching again, and I'm trying to show the batter. He did give up a single to Indians prospect Ronnie Rodriguez, who is now on second base.
Right.
But their games are good. Like I said, they do have a pay-per-view type service online, or else if you happen to possess a Spanish package on your local cable system, YouTube channels that actually carry Dominican games.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, definitely check them out. We still have a lot of baseball internationally to talk about, and we will for some time. It's good to know. Good to know. All right. Well, folks, I guess we'll wrap things up for this particular week. Eric, do you have any other comments about any league at all, anywhere in the world, before we sign off to the cheerleaders?
Well, Mexico comes back tomorrow after a little hiatus because of Mexico getting the different zone color for the week because of our lovely COVID virus that we've got going around the world. So they start back up tomorrow. Nicaragua's playing with fans in their league. Things are looking up as far as, you know, certain companies coming out with vaccines, which hopefully by next year will be somewhat deployable, and we can get back to normal again.
Awesome. Okay, I hope we can. All right, folks. Well, listen, thank you once again for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word. Comment about what leagues you want us to talk about more, any teams within those leagues you want us to comment about more. Be happy to do that and do our research with that and put that on for you. So, all right. Well, again, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.
Adios, amigos.
공룡 뚜루루뚜루 힘이 센 뚜루루뚜루 우리는 뚜루루뚜루 다이노스